Hi, my name is Susan, and this is my channel, Susan's Road Less Traveled. The following presentation is going to be a video that is a bit off from my usual content. I have for some time considered recording videos that highlight the history and experiences of my relatives, specifically my paternal grandparents. I've always been captivated by the life they carved out for themselves, especially from the 1930s into the 60s and 70s. And their lives left a definitive mark on me. This video is specifically about my paternal grandpa, Warrencaster, and an event he became embroiled in back in the 1960s. This historic event has prompted many people to spend a myriad of time researching his name and making conjectures about his supposed connection to a tragic event, especially when the advent of computers allowed for such extensive research. Outside of my grandpa being interviewed in 1995 at age 77 and what would have been 32 years from the event, I am the only other family member to speak publicly now 59 years from the event. I am aware there may be inevitable digging up of conspiracy theories and conjecture again if this video goes anywhere. I'll ask that comments remain respectful and reasonable, lest I shut them off. And while there were literally thousands of other people present, it is my contention that Grandpa merely became a non-player character in an unfortunate moment in time. So without further ado, I bring you Oswald, the TSBD, and Grandpa's rifles. My paternal grandpa, Warrencaster, was born in Mountain Air, New Mexico in 1918. He graduated with a BA in 1939 and an MA in 1943 in education from Highlands University in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and spent his early career in the 1940s teaching in and around Las Vegas and Espanola. He married my grandmother, Ruth Anna Walsh, from Atchison, Kansas, in 1939. In 1944, he joined the Navy and spent 2 years stateside, teaching in San Diego, and was discharged in 1946. My father, who was born in 1940, spent those 2 years with his grandparents in Tatum, New Mexico, while his parents were away. Most family on my grandfather's immediate side, his father and 2 of his brothers, were teachers. Others in the family became forest rangers and ranchers and resided in the mid part of New Mexico, southeast of Albuquerque. In 1952, Grandpa moved the family, Grandma and my dad, to Texas. My uncle was born in 1954, and the family resided in Denton, Texas, for a time where my dad graduated from high school in 1958. Dad entered the Coast Guard Academy thereafter and started his life in the military and moved out of the picture. And for reference, I was born in 1964. My grandpa's move to Texas was a job change from teaching to working in management and textbook sales. He moved the family to Dallas and began working as the assistant manager for Southwestern Publishing, Scott Forsman, which had offices located in the Texas School Book Depository. Yes, that school book depository, the one at dealeyplaza. Grandpa's position required him to travel to schools, colleges, and universities, meeting with those responsible for buying textbooks. On Wednesday, 20 November 1963, Grandpa took his lunch hour and walked to Sanger Harris, a sporting goods store located in downtown Dallas. There he bought 2 rifles, a .30-06 sporterized Mauser and a Remington single-shot .22, the latter being a Christmas gift for his youngest son. The store wrapped and boxed them, and he carried them back to the office. Upon returning to the building, he showed off his purchases, and he stood in the first floor office of Mr. Roy Truly, warehouse superintendent of the TSBD. Upon leaving work that day, he put the rifles in his trunk and took them home. On Friday, 22 November 1963, JFK was assassinated shortly after noontime as his motorcade drove through Dealey Plaza. My grandpa was out of town that day on business, meeting a dean at North Texas State University, a meeting that had been on his calendar for weeks. He found out about the assassination from students as they ran about on campus and immediately left and drove home to Dallas. According to published documents, within minutes after the event, the TSBD was being searched for evidence of the shooting, persons, and weapons. According to records, Lee Harvey Oswald had been working at the TSBD as a stockman since mid-October without issues. Oswald was initially seen nonchalantly drinking a Coke in the first floor lunchroom immediately after the shooting, and a police officer was noted to stop to question him, but was waved off and told that Oswald was an employee of the TSBD. Oswald was apprehended on 22 November 1963, within an hour and a half of the assassination. He stated during his police interview on 24 November that he had left work because nothing was going to get done for the rest of the day. He traveled home via bus and cab, changed out of his dirty clothes, and then went to the movies, taking his pistol with him. Other reports note that once Oswald left the TSBD, he took a bus and a cab back to his rented room, put on a jacket, and grabbed his pistol, shot a Dallas police officer on the street only blocks from his room, then ducked into and was apprehended at a movie theater, apparently caught due to a call made to the police stating some guy hadn't bought a ticket for the movie. As an employee of the TSBD, Grandpa was interviewed in early December 1963, though this dated document is dated 24 November. And while investigating the incident, it's obvious that the rifles in the office came up. I'm going to read this to you just because it is a little bit hard. Stating, Federal Bureau of Investigation, November 24, 1963. Mr. Warrencaster, manager of Southwestern Publishing Company, 7th floor, 411 Elm Street, Dallas, residence, 3338 Merrill, Dallas, informed that he was not in Dallas, Texas on November 22, 1963, and stated he does not know Lee Harvey Oswald. Mr. Castor related that on Wednesday, November 20, 1963, he purchased a .30-06 rifle and a .22 rifle at Sanger's in Dallas. Subsequent to the purchase of the above rifles, he took them to the TSBD at 411 Elm Street and exhibited the two rifles to Mr. Roy S. Truly, warehouse superintendent, TSBD, and stated that he had intended to hide the two rifles in his office because he was going to give the .22 rifle to his son for Christmas. On second thought, he was afraid that the guns might be stolen, so he took them to his home on November 20, 1963. He stated he has never seen anyone with a gun at the TSBD other than the above related incident. With multiple people testifying of the rifle incident, there does seem to be some differences in who may or may not have been present at this particular gathering, whether Mr. Truly alone or others from the office. This document states, in connection with information furnished by Conrad Galvin, 3989 Park Lane, Dallas, and David Torres, 3619 Almazon, Dallas, it is noted that Mr. Roy S. Truly, superintendent of the Texas School Book Depository, advised J. Doyle Williams and A. Pinkston that several days prior to November 22, 1963, a Mr. Warren Castor of the Southwestern Publishing Company came to his office with 2 rifles, which he showed to him. Truly examined the weapons, returned them to Castor, and Castor departed the building. And this information has previously been reported. Further, during Oswald's 24 November interrogation, the archived testimony indicates that upon being questioned if he owned a rifle, Oswald didn't straight up answer that question, but he stated the following. Captain Fritz asked Oswald if he ever owned a rifle, and Oswald stated that he had observed a Mr. Truly, a supervisor at the Texas School Book Depository, on November 20, 1963, display a rifle to some individuals in his office on the first floor of the Texas School Book Depository, but denied ever owning a rifle himself. And then he goes on to state he's never been to Mexico, and he did live in the Soviet Union for 3 years. So, of course, there have been pictures of Oswald holding a rifle, though I'm not here to confirm or deny that he did or the authenticity of these pictures. Oswald was subsequently killed 24 November 1963 by Jack Ruby as Oswald was being escorted from the Dallas police station to be moved to a more secure jail. And Grandpa eventually appeared before Mr. Ball and the Warren Commission in May 1969 to give his testimony. No accusations were ever made that Grandpa had anything to do with JFK's assassination or suspicion of the rifles in the building other than what he stated, except within the conspiracy theory crowds. In 1995, a gentleman named Rick Castor from the UK, and no relation that I'm aware of, but same last name, corresponded with my grandfather, and he and another gentleman from the UK, Ian Grigg, came to the US, to Albuquerque, to interview my grandfather. And Grandpa indicated in that article with Rick Castor that Grandpa and my grandma and my uncle had returned to the TSBD the day after the assassination for Grandpa to get papers out of the office, and there wasn't any rope off or tape off of the building whatsoever. In that same interview, Grandpa reiterated that he had never personally met or had a conversation with Oswald at the office, as they didn't work together. And I'm surmising that Grandpa was at a managerial level. He also was a traveling salesman, and not a supervisor over that staff, which would indicate why they never conversed. But he did comment at one point during the 1995 interview that he thought Oswald was, quote unquote, some kind of nut. Now, I'm not sure where that came from, except maybe over the ensuing 32 years prior to his interview, much ado about the whole situation, and media and articles and conspiracies about it maybe gave him, that food for thought. But he did reiterate again that he did not know Oswald personally. Grandpa continued his career with Southwestern Publishing until retiring as a vice president of sales in the early 1980s. I am personally in possession of the Remington 22, and though I've been unable to confirm, I still believe the family is in possession of the .30-06 Mauser. These following links are of the Warren Commission witnesses list, the warrencaster Warren Report direct testimony, a main Google search of my grandfather's name, and then some conspiracy theory blogs, of which I noted the last recorded conversations were about the 2020 timeframe. I'll link those in the description. I do have a copy of the Rick Castor article. I can't post it, however, though, because the link is so old, it's broken. So if there's anybody out there that knows if Mr. Castor is still, if Rick Castor is still alive, I would love to be in touch with him And through my research doing this, I noted that Mr. Ian Grigg passed away in 2019. So to confirm some provenance of this, I do have two pictures. Credit my personal photos of Christmas 1963, and the face here has been blurred to protect the innocent. My grandfather's youngest son holding his Christmas present, the other one here, and likely the bag that they came in. And another picture of my grandfather and my grandmother and him holding the firearms also. So I never got to speak to my grandfather about this issue. As an adult, I lived far away, and he became fairly ill towards the end of his life, and just during visits, it just wasn't anything that, for whatever reason, came up. So until my grandmother passed away, my grandfather passed away in 2001, 10 days after 9/11, and my grandmother passed away in early 2010. So not until her passing did I come into possession of photographs and articles and letters and things like that, I started looking into some of this, and it just wasn't anything that we as a family wholly discussed during my youth. So thanks for listening to my story. Picture of me and my dad and my grandfather shortly after I was born. My dad was in the Coast Guard stationed in Honolulu, Hawaii, and my grandfather and me during that visit. And he was a special person and a very interesting soul. I had a great connection with him, and he was just a wonderful grandfather. So thank you for listening to this, and I appreciate it. Like, subscribe, share, comment. I'd love to read comments and have intelligent discussions. So thanks, everybody. I'd love to hear what you think about this story, and have a blessed day. Bye.